What's
No.
your read on why so many black men, Hispanic voters have found in Trump something to admire, something even to vote for?
Well, Madam Editor, I'm glad you asked me that question. For me, the Democratic Party emasculates black men.
Wow.
And I think Hispanic men probably feel the same way. And I say this because they weaponize identity. When and where we enter, who we are, how we identify is important to who we are, just like our fingerprints. But if you're not going to use my identity to advance a social justice cause, and you're just going to use my identity as a blunt force object, now I got a problem. And so what the Democratic Party does, they put black women on a pedestal and they say, we're the mothers of the movement, or we saved the party. But yet you don't put forth policies that save black babies. You don't put forth policies that deal with the maternal death rate of black women and black babies in the United States of America. You don't do those things that lift and edify. Yes, identity is important. Both parties use it differently. Republicans use it to say that everybody black or brown or of a mixed race is somehow kind of way a DEI hire. They use it to say certain books will be banned. Don't tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how this country was formulated, because you might hurt a white child's feelings by saying that, yeah, chattel slavery existed, and oh, by the way, white powerful folks stole the land from the indigenous people. So all of those things, Chinese Exclusion Act, I mean, we can go down the list. But Democrats use it in a way that alienates other folks, and it offends me. So when I talk to black men across this country, they don't see themselves in this party. It's one thing to recognize the power and prowess of black women and the sacrifices that we make. It is another thing to put us above black men. The black struggle, black men and black women have to be together. We don't have the luxury to be separated, and so I resent the Democratic Party for doing that. And so black men do not see themselves in the party. That bravado, because we got a kind of masculine energy, and masculine energy is not all bad, but the type of bravado that Trump puts forward is still very much rooted in a hierarchical patriarchy, and a lot of men gravitate to that.
That's something that we've spoken about before on the show. That's something that we spoke about before on the show, with how Trump handles a lot of his stuff. It's just appealing. It's just appealing compared to how we see black men and their representation by the Democrat Party. When we see the Democratic Party highlight black men, in my opinion, it's usually emasculated black men. It's the Van Jones crying on TV. Y'all know I always say that. It's just not a masculine figure that I would identify with or that I would feel inspired to follow. You get what I'm saying? As far as being a leader. It doesn't come across like the leadership that maybe I'm accustomed to following, so maybe that's the issue. It doesn't come across like the type of men when, whether I was on the football field or whatever else, that I would be inspired to follow. It doesn't come across as far as the scholars that I've researched. Like, it doesn't. I grew up, y'all know, Malcolm X. We got the same birthday. I always had a strong affiliation with Malcolm X and just was inspired by him, how he carried himself. It doesn't come across like a masculine energy, the type of men that Democrats put out on the forefront. It always seems to come across like a man has to take a backseat role. I'll give you like a silly example. I wasn't even gonna say this, but I thought about it with Tim Walz. So this is a silly example. Remember that clip that they played where they were talking about Tim Walz and the type of tacos that he makes with Kamala? There was a clip that said there's a clip that Tim Walz and Kamala, he said, I make white guy tacos, and Kamala said, what is that, mayonnaise and like tuna or something like that? And he said, nah, just beef and cheese, no seasoning. But then something as simple, I should have showed it to y'all, but I thought it was so petty. But then it came out, I don't know how this news station, I think it was Sky News, and they had their segment of lefties losing it, and they showed that Tim Walz actually won like a taco competition in which the taco making competition showed all his ingredients, showed the seasoning. So it's just one of those things. It's a silly example, but it's just one of those things where you feel that you have to downplay you yourself, downplay your achievements, downplay your existence, downplay your role in order to help elevate another woman. You get what I'm saying? So that's what just seems to be happening. That's how we see it. It just is what it is. That's how we see it. Maybe we're looking at it the wrong way, but that's what it feels like. I do not feel like there is a place for me in the Democratic Party whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, so is it, I mean, you feel in a way, it's tokenization in a way if they don't pay any attention to it, right? If it
the mic, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
We're falling apart at the end of the night. But that's, I mean, that's essentially.
That's exactly
And
it.
is it a thing that I've seen, you know, a lot of people, and you know, particularly certain kind of left-wing scholars say that, yeah, we've focused on identity for a long time, and it's been a lot of words at the expense of class. Class is an important element, and that is not something the Democratic Party wants to deal with. You said this about Bernie Sanders, and I talked to him about this before. You know, everyone knows that, you know, they thumbed the scale, to put it very mildly, in, you know, 2016.
They put bodies on the
They put
scale.
bodies on the scale, right? There's a follow-up question that I think everyone thinks that we presume that we know the answer to this. Why? Why is the Democratic Party, you know, trying to box out somebody who's very popular? His policies.
They're talking
are very
about Bernie
popular.
Sanders.
He's a very effective speaker. He has this kind of consistency that you don't have a conversation. Well, Kamala Harris said this in 2020. She says this now because this is the direction of the party. Why is the party afraid of somebody who could actually win? It's not like you're wasting time with somebody who can't win. I think Bernie Sanders could have won.
He could have beat Trump. I believe that. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. Trump is a faux populist. Senator Bernie Sanders is a real populist who really believes in the power of the people. I think they fear it because both political parties, private organizations, I want our viewers to understand this, that
I want y'all to hear, you know, some of the things that she mentioned about Bernie, and then we're going to wrap it up because they're getting ready to talk. They're getting ready to go into the reparation talk. I'll make one comment on that, and then we'll move on. My fault. I wasn't keeping up with the chat. Never forget, brother wrote, "You'll take it and like it." Oh, all right. So he's trolling. You could tell he's a troll. By the way, hey, never forget, brother, when you say, well, too bad, T-O, that's like to a destination. It's supposed to be an extra O, I believe. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, let's keep going.
control our electoral system are captured. So you have corporate capture of both major parties. And so corporations don't want us to have health care for all. Corporations don't want us to drive down the cost of pharmaceutical drugs so that we can pay the same amount that our sisters and brothers in Canada, by way of example, pay. They don't want that. And so these corporations spend billions of collective dollars every single year to lobby members of the Congress and the people running for the presidency so that they can stay in control. It is very simple. Just follow the money. Follow who's donating the money, how much money they're donating, how these corporations are investing multi-millions of dollars that adds up to billions of dollars collectively to really bribery is legal in the United States of America.
All right, so I want to discuss that because it's funny to me that she's talking about Bernie Sanders, but actually, they did do this with Bernie. Bernie came out and said that they did this with him. So it's not, I shouldn't say that it's funny that she's talking about this with Bernie, but I almost would have loved for her to actually talk about RFK Jr. because in my opinion, RFK Jr. is more of a threat to the establishment, more of a threat to these big corporations than a Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders is still, you know, go along, get along in a lot of ways. And I'm waiting for her to talk about the conversation with reparations, and then maybe we'll talk about
the
Bernie
reason why
more.
they didn't want somebody like Senator Bernard Sanders, because he really was going to do his best to put the power in the hands of the people and hold corporate interests responsible. We need real campaign finance reform in this country if we're ever going to get some of the nice things that people like myself and Senator Sanders and others were and still are fighting for.
There's been something, to go back to the uncommitted Gaza conversation, there's been something happening it seems to me kind of like one of these social media phenomenon, but maybe has a deeper truth in it, where over the last couple weeks since Harris became the nominee, you've seen sort of Black influencers and activists and the pro-Palestine influencers and activists kind of, there's a split emerging to where you're seeing a lot of frustration that I think is pretty just on behalf of the Black activists who are saying, look, it's our time to think about our needs right now, which are extremely pressing, and then a lot of frustration by the Palestinian side of things saying, well, how dare you abandon us in this moment, you know? I'm curious what you think about that, and that sort of whether there is a natural connection between the Black struggle here and, you know, whether that energy that's being expended on this issue in the Middle East is not taking away from more pressing issues here at home.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up.
I'm going to skip a little
They're adding
bit.
free press right now.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I want numerous. But what you cannot do, Arab Americans or any other group, is to tell Black people what we must do. That's where the Black sisters and brothers, because we see our liberation through them. I don't think any other group in this country can be liberated without full Black liberation.
So very quickly, just to give some context here, and maybe I should have gone back. My fault. I didn't mean to skip over that. But what she's discussing is the fact that Black people always seem to take on everybody else's fight. So they're talking about the situation between Gaza and Israel, Palestine and Israel, and she's a big supporter of Palestinians, but she was discussing how a lot of times the Palestinians, even, or the Arabs, she had back and forth with them for saying that you should be, as a Black person, frontlining our fight. Maybe I should just go back. I'm sorry about that.
Just follow it. Economically, socially, politically. As Black people fight for liberation, every other group gets that same liberation. But the same love and respect is not given to Black people. You have groups of people, and I'm speaking very generally, so folks don't be adding free press and all of that. I am making a generic
they're
statement.
adding free press right now.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I want to be clear that I am making a generic statement. That the same love and commitment to the struggle of Black Americans whose ancestors were chattel slaves on this land is not shown. Now, do we have some folks that stand by our side every now and then? Yeah, but I'm talking about deep-seated, we gonna be with our Black sisters and brothers because we see our liberation through them. I don't think any other group in this country can be liberated without full Black liberation. So Black people are offended. And when you have Arab Americans, some, who would, in my grandmother's words, fix their mouths to tell Black people that we need to be on the front line of their struggle, that is offensive. Now, there are a lot of Black people on the front line of the struggle. I'm one of them. Dr. Cornel West is another. They're numerous. But what you cannot do, Arab Americans or any other group, is to tell Black people what we must do. That's where the offense takes place. And to the extent, and there are some people who understand that. One of my dear friends, Rania Patrice, she understands that. But there are a lot of people, and I think others are making mischief. Some of these things might be bots.
So I just want to get to the reparation talk. So I just wanted y'all, I didn't want y'all to think that I was avoiding that combo.
For us. And what I say is that I am whose ancestors were chattel slaves.
Getting totally sidetracked. I feel like it's so much worse because I feel like,
in other words, Black Americans whose ancestors were chattel slaves. I think people take that for granted and they don't love Black people as much as we love humanity. It doesn't make us a perfect people, but Black people are usually on the front lines for most marginalized groups.
but I feel like it's so much worse because I feel like all these other marginalized groups steal valor from the ADOS community. Yeah. Like they use like the Americans descended from slaves and the Black struggle, whether it's, you know, and you see each group like coming up and saying, now it's our turn. And
what did we talk about after George Floyd? When they're writing Black Lives Matter on the street, but then it turned into Black queer lives matter, Black trans lives matter. And it turned into all these different things that it had nothing to do with George Floyd's situation. It had nothing to do with it. But everybody hijacks Black movements Every group hijacks, uses black people, and we've been the fools that just allow ourselves to be used by everybody, but to get nothing in return. We get the least amount in return. We get the least amount. A lot of these other groups get reparations. A lot of these other groups get all these things. But when it comes to blacks issues, it's not necessarily the same energy. And this is why I want her to talk about Bernie, because we know that Bernie responded regarding reparations.
The Democratic Party, I'm sorry, getting totally sidetracked by this stolen valor, and each time they move from one thing to the next, and it's so frustrating.
And that's why I don't like that identity. I totally agree with you. Reparations. I want to hear the vice president. I wrote, Newsweek.
Yes.
My editor right here. We need a black agenda. Part of that black agenda is reparations. So definitely I'm miffed when President Obama, basically said, he's not the president for black people. I think Vice President Harris has been asked similar questions even before she started running for the presidency. You cannot, in the United States of America, say that you are for true freedom and liberation without recognizing the harm generationally, even to this day, that has been done to black descendants of enslaved people. Let me take Black Wall Street, for example. You both know there were 4 elders alive, all over the age of 100. 2 of them have died.
So this is regarding Tulsa, Oklahoma.
They went before Congress. All they got was pats on the back and atta girl, atta boy, and so sorry you went through that. Now,
so people that are not, let me give a little bit of context to this, because there's people that were survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing when that Black Wall Street was destroyed. Now, what gets me is that, she supports Bernie. And the reason why I wanted to get to that point is because it's tough. It's tough because, even though you support a guy like Bernie, to me, the only person that was totally honest about reparations was RFK Jr. and saying like, hey, I just don't think that it's anything that would ever actually happen. I think that a lot of people that bring it up don't either understand or they're just using it to entice people with their vote. And he said he's not going to do that. He just doesn't see it as being something that could happen. So let's go and look at this. Hold on. I want y'all to see this video. I want y'all to listen to Bernie Sanders respond to this question about reparations. And I think that it's pretty funny because a lot of people think Bernie, is the super progressive. He's the guy that's for the people and all this other stuff. So let's take a look.
You're scared to say reparations because it seems like every time.
Ma'am, I don't think that's a fair.
So the question specifically, my black son. Okay, I know you're scared to say black. I know you're scared to say reparations because it seems like every time.
Ma'am, I don't think that's a fair.
I let you finish as well, but it seems like every time we talk about black people and us getting something for the systematic oppression and exploitation of our people, we have to include every other person of color. So today, can we please talk about specifically black people and reparations?
We can talk about what I just indicated, in my view, is that when you have, and you and I may have a disagreement on this, because it's not just black, it is Latino. There are areas in America, in poor rural areas, where it's whites, okay? So I believe that in a country which has more income and wealth inequality than any other country, that yeah, the time is long overdue to start investing in poor countries. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth, especially within the African American community. So what I've said black 50 times, all right? That's the 51st time, all right? But this is a national issue, all right? So what we want and what I believe we should do, all right, is to invest most heavily in those communities most in need. And when
So this is not the clip that I wanted to show. And I was just showing this on the fly. So let me see if this is the one. I'm looking for something very specific.
In a very significant way on distressed communities, communities that have high levels of poverty. So as I've just indicated, I think we have to do everything that we can to end institutional racism in this country. It is not acceptable to me that the rate
Hopefully I'll
of
find it.
childhood poverty among the African American community is over 30% in this country. That is beyond belief. That African Americans die from cancer at higher rates than whites. So we're going to do everything we can to put resources into distressed communities and improve lives for those people who have been hurt from the legacy of slavery.
So what is your position specifically on reparations? I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they
Well,
want
what
to
does that
support.
mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can
Bernie.
to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country.
I'll tell you what they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that, reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said. Okay? In other words, as a result of the legacy of slavery, you have massive levels of inequality. It has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed now.
Many of you that have watched Charlie Brown,
So I can't find the exact video that I wanted to reference, but the only reason why I was showing it is because the lady, she was talking about reparations, and she was saying how she's a Bernie supporter, and Bernie made it very clear that he said that, you know, reparations would be divisive. And this is somebody, I don't waste time on thinking about reparations or anything like that. I'll be totally honest. But for a guy like Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish, to understand that Jewish people receive reparations from America. Let me be very clear. Jewish people receive reparations from America, descendants of the Holocaust, descendants or people. I don't know the exact, qualifications, but I know that when Barack Obama was president, there was a good amount of reparations that were given. So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, if something, not to say that Jewish people don't deserve reparations, but the argument would be if you believe that Jewish people deserve reparations, then why, and Bernie Sanders' exact words were that they would be too divisive. Why would it be too divisive for black people to receive reparations? Let me be very clear. I don't waste time fighting that battle because it goes back to what RFK said. I just don't think that it's something that actually people take seriously. Like, I don't think that it's ever going to happen. So I'd rather just, and even if it does happen, cool. But I just think that the best thing when it comes to black communities or any impoverished communities is to figure out a way to help people save themselves rather than to just try to throw money at a problem or throw whatever at a problem to where it's like a social program to where you're not preparing people. You can give people as much stimulus as you want, reparations, but if people that receive the money are not changing their mindset, then all that's going to happen, totally honest, is that money, you're going to give them the money on Friday, and by Monday, all that money has been spent on businesses that are probably not within the black community. Let's just be totally honest. So that was just one of those things that was connecting some dots. But I do want to share this video with y'all on Instagram, just to kind of show us. I think a lot of times we hear about inflation, but we don't really understand how it's impacting us. So just wanted to